Hey, it's Tom. Welcome to another episode of the Mini Sculpting Super Show. I'm really excited for this latest interview. This is with a guy that I've been following for a long time, and we've become friends, named Matt Fitzgerald. We have some very similar backgrounds, and he's just recently gotten into sculpting himself. And so I wanted to talk to him about his own creations and creative processes and share with you guys a little bit about his sculpting journey, since so many people are tracking the same way he has. All right, well, enjoy the interview. Hello, this is Tom, and welcome to another episode of the Mini Sculpting Super Show. This time, I'll be speaking with Matt Fitzgerald, someone who I have been a big fan of for many years. He is the creator of Savage Shard of Gosen. That was kickstarted a few years ago, and he's working on it, and it is quite the game. And we'll get into that. I'm blown away by the depth of it and the fact that you have done all of it. You're super talented.
And how long it's been since it started?
Well,
and it's still not finished.
But in perspective, when you see what the game is and how much you've put into it, both from the art, I was going to say you're super multi-talented. You write, you draw, you illustrate, you design the games, you code, you're making music. It's all you. I mean, it's
for better or worse, yeah.
Incredible. It's incredible.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yes. So you've also. But one of the reasons why I wanted to specifically reach out to you and have you on the show was one. I mean, I've just wanted to talk to you in more detail for a long time. But you've recently started sculpting, so I thought that would be fun to have you on, and we'll get into that a little later. I'd like to start
brand new.
Yeah, but you're coming along, and again with all your other talents, I'm not surprised that you're able to pick this up and start developing that as well. So yeah, I don't know. I can just...
Yeah, well, thank goodness for your channel, man. Like you say, you're a fan of like what I'm doing. I'm a big fan of yours, and it's been a lot of fun watching your channel. I take a lot of inspiration from it too. Even if I'm not like necessarily in the like sculpting zone or whatever, it's a lot of fun to just have on. To see somebody like an expert like you, like just going at it,
Yeah, that's I mean, what's so amazing about YouTube and Twitch and stuff these days is that you can. I mean, I feel the same way about your stuff. I was, I think I can't remember exactly how I stumbled upon it. I was probably just looking for a really cool retro Metroidvania, Zelda type game, and that was definitely one that popped up. So there was that, and then also the fact that it was Game Maker. I was like very intrigued by the idea of that and how that, you could, in theory, make a game so easily without having to be a super uber programmer.
Yeah, which I am absolutely not either. I didn't know what I was doing, like unless you count like, period 5 or whatever in high school, Mr. Isaac's C++ class or something, which I don't remember any of that stuff. But yeah, like being able to just like find something online like Game Maker, and there being a host of free stuff like videos on how to do like a bunch of little things, and then you're able to just kind of put it together and kind of grind through it, and then it's like, oh, I made a little guy move. That's fun.
So Savage is a retro style Sega-esque maybe looking game. I'll put up a screen overlay here so people can see it. You should definitely go check it out. It's on Steam. It's worth it. And so yeah, that leads me to one of my questions. Was Game Maker like the first thing you decided to try to make Savage, or did you try other things, or was that even your first game that you tried to make? Did you dive right in?
Like I've toyed with other stuff, like really, really goofy stuff. I mean, if we're talking about high school again, like computer programming classes, and like, I'll make a little weird game out of ASCII art, using, dashes and the letter I or whatever to represent an orc, and then it's like, you win, like that kind of stuff. But Savage is definitely like my first attempt at making something that is hopefully fun for the end user to have an experience with, and and to sell and all that stuff too.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I asked because when I toyed very briefly with the idea, well, maybe I want to make my own retro game. I think the first thing I stumbled upon was Multimedia Fusion.
Yes,
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah,
which is cool, but the way you have to think about and put those, I don't remember what they're called. There's little like modules or steps. I don't know. It's a little strange and get very complicated.
Yeah, and I remember that particular one not being like terribly intuitive either.
Right. It seemed like you had to really think and code the way they thought about it.
Yeah,
like
you're
the
kind
way
of
they
at the
thought
mercy
things would
of
work.
them.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, let's jump back further then. So I'm really curious about your background. Like I said, you're writing, you're drawing, you're coding, you're illustrating. Like what's your background like with art and learning? Did you teach yourself things?
Yeah,
Did you
a lot
go
of
to school? What are your aspirations?
A lot of it has been like a degree of like growing up and like getting into like little, like kids art programs and stuff, and like because I was always interested in like drawing is just kind of something I always tried to do anyway, including sculpting. Like I'd make little guys out of like tinfoil and whatever, like all the time, like try to do like articulated action figures using like cardboard and stuff, and so like that's just kind of always been like a thing in my brain, I guess. But like no formal education really. Like I did take some like I lived in LA for a little while and did like indie movies and stuff, and like worked on a few sets, and we tried to do our own projects and stuff, and I took some like community college like film courses and junk. As a teenager, I did a lot of music, played a lot of music into my 20s, and like we recorded indie records and stuff, and like played a lot of shows, and yeah, I don't know.
Cool.
Like I can't really point. I had like I grew up with my stepdad ran an exhibiting company, so I was surrounded by. Yeah, like they'd make exhibits for like Sony or whoever at like places like E3. So I was always going to E3 as a kid. And things like Comic-Con for free, which was I was spoiled rotten with that stuff. Not only in that respect, but like at his business there were all these like professional draftsmen and stuff, and also hardcore nerds. Like they were all really into Star Wars and like model building and wargaming too, and they'd make their own props, and a lot of them would go to Renaissance fairs and stuff, like making their own weapons, and so it was a really cool environment to grow up in and around. So
that's really, and yeah, it definitely helps, right, to see and know others who do that, do things that are off the beaten path, not just an office job.
And I absolutely did not take full advantage of it growing up either, because it was like
you never know. Right?
I don't want to do that, but it's still like you're kind of looking anyway and like taking some of it in and stuff. But it's like, do you want to be this guy's apprentice? Like, no, that sounds I'm gonna go play Final Fantasy or something.
That was future for research for Savage though, so.
Oh man, like I think about that stuff now, I'm like, oh, you idiot.
Yeah,
idiot.
Can only move forward, but
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, so what was the impetus for Savage? What finally like kicked it off for you that you said, I'm gonna make this?
Yeah, like I had just spent like a disastrous amount of time in LA, where like I'd worked at a place and like like they didn't pay me and like all this like wacky stuff. Like there's like a lot of different horror stories that you've ever heard about like LA. Like some of I was working with a guy on some projects and like our ideas got stolen and turned into another thing. Wow. And like just a lot of stuff like that, like over and over. But I had always had an interest in video games, especially retro, what we call retro now, right? And like barbarians and fantasy and stuff, and I don't know, like I just kind of I've always had the itch to make a game, so I was like, I'm gonna try to find a program that will let me do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, spending 4 years learning like assembly language or C++ or something.
Yeah.
Something that allows me to like be an artist and like not know too much like at the outset.
Mm-hmm.
Get something up and moving quick, and that happened to be Game Maker, like after a few internet searches and stuff. And I found some books on it, like weirdly enough. Like Game Maker was Yo-Yo Games was publishing books on how to use their product, so I picked up a couple of those and just did it cover to cover. And I've always liked like Barbarians and stuff, so it was thanks to probably HeroQuest and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like I kind of had this feeling. I think that's what tempted me or attracted me to it at the time. Was it seems like these smaller, not that it's weird because Savage is actually quite a massive game in the context of what those games maybe typically
Unfortunately,
were.
yeah.
But
I definitely outscoped myself.
But like
too much.
You can get a lot out of a smaller creative project, even as far because it's got everything, right? You got to do music, you've got storytelling, your stuff comes to life because it's animated. You get to draw, and it really pulls it all together. Whereas, with your, if you're illustrating, you do draw a static picture and it can tell a story, but it's that moment. And miniature is kind of the same thing, but you're typically just a figure, and hopefully you're playing a game, and that can help some of the story. But that's what's really cool about, these kind of video games. It's always attracted me. It's not so overblown, right, as a lot of the modern stuff, but you can still get really powerful stories going.
And like what I like about the retro aesthetic too is it's like you can kind of step into it a little easier than it's like if you're playing it like Assassin's Creed or something. It's like that's kind of it. Your imagination doesn't have to do anything.
Good point.
With something like like Castlevania or something, you can like kind of I want to say imprint on it a little easier or whatever, but like your mind is like starting to tell a story between like the stuff that the game isn't visually filling or whatever. Same thing with like war games and tabletop RPGs and stuff. Even more so there. But yeah.
So have you been into those for a long time? You mentioned HeroQuest. Were you there?
Oh yes.
Did you get your copy back in the day? And cool.
Thanks to those commercials.
Yes.
On TV.
Oh my gosh, they were the greatest thing ever.
I'll use my broadsword.
Fire!
Like, I want to use a broadsword too. Yeah, fire!
Oh, amazing.
Just it was like a little 3D like play set that had rules and everything. That was like my introduction to like role playing games and war games and stuff. And it just happened to be part of the the Warhammer universe, which I thoroughly explored as well. But yeah, HeroQuest was definitely the gateway drug to high adventure.
Yes, it sure is. Do you still have your copy?
Not my copy. That unfortunately, we had an apartment fire in 2013, and I lost a lot of stuff. And HeroQuest and a second copy of HeroQuest that I picked up because I wanted more minis and like parts of mine broke and whatever. I lost both of those, but I have since like gotten a copy on eBay. Well, so, I can't live in a house without HeroQuest.
That's good. Well, at least you have that. At least you didn't. I mean, I guess it's very tragic to have lost it. You're in a fire plus whatever else, but at least you didn't know the pain of foolishness, as so many people who had it got rid of it because they're like, I'm a teenager now or an adult. I don't need this.
Yeah, I'm too cool for this.
I never did that with my HeroQuest. That was the one game. I have cycled through a lot of stuff. I even can't believe I did it to Warhammer Quest, got rid of that. But I've never, ever let go of my HeroQuest. So I have my original copy. And
that's good. Yeah.
I'm very excited.
It's part of your soul.
Yep. Sure
that Barbarian mini.
Yeah, it's great.
Was what did it for me, I think. I don't know.
It's a great game, great little game, and the sculpts are so iconic, for sure.
Yeah, they're really like they're very readable.
So is that Let's talk about miniatures for a little bit. So HeroQuest kind of got you into everything. You've done Warhammer, and I know you've explored other games and miniatures as well. Do you have a particular aesthetic that you like, or style of miniature that you're kind of using as inspiration on your sculpting journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's like early to mid '90s, like Games Workshop, basically. um, like I love the Perry sculpts and stuff, and I have like a bunch of Bretonians and stuff, but yeah, since I started with like that scale, that's kind of always been like synonymous with the hobby for me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like I saw you starting to sculpt 15 millimeter. I was like, wait, there's a different.
That's an interesting segue there, and because I haven't done a lot of it. Well, we can move over and talk about this. Yeah, 15 millimeter is very interesting. You haven't tried it yet, have you?
No, I mean I've only tried my one frumpy barbarian.
Gotcha.
I did.
Gotcha.
I still have to crack down and like do some more stuff, but.
Yeah, 15 millimeter is intriguing. I've done I did a large set of them for Battle Stations, which is kind of a kooky Star Trek-esque world board game.
Okay.
It's a very, very cool game. FTL is a very close approximation. That computer game is a close approximation to kind of what you're doing in that, but it's a lot more Hero Quest / roleplay than FTL is. But you're right, got little dudes running around the ship trying to keep everything working and firing at the enemy ship.
That's neat.
Yeah, so
I've never heard of this. I'll have to look this
they've
up.
done a couple editions, so they've got a few different ones out there, but it's a really fun game. So I did a bunch for that, and I've done a few other random ones over the years, but it's never been a huge thing that I've explored personally sculpting. One guy that he actually helped me get started and figured out when I was having to do those, named Roderick Campbell, and he's outstanding at sculpting 15 millimeters miniatures. But it's definitely an intriguing scale, and I know you and I were talking earlier about how, that 28 millimeter heroic, it's kind of like our aesthetic and what we like.
Yeah, it's hard to go away from.
Yeah, well, because it's that perfect spot where you can capture a lot of detail and character. You get a lot out of your mileage without taking up too much space. But at the same time, it still can be a lot of work to make an army and play a bigger army game with that.
Yes.
So they
will know me by my pile of fame when I die.
That's right. But it got me thinking when you asked me about that the other day. I was starting to think 50 millimeter might be worth exploring for playing these army games, even some of the smaller ones, representative ones like Dragon Rampant, which is one I really enjoy. Because
I haven't played Dragon Rampant, but I want.
You should get it. It's
so
fun.
It keeps popping up on my radar.
It's a real great simplified version of Warhammer. You don't have to worry about any wheeling or anything, but it still gives you a chance to roll a chunk of dice, and it just moves. It's very quick and fast moving, and I highly recommend it. I like Oathmark a lot too, but it's a lot more, and it actually captures that whole wheeling and maneuvering a lot more, but you feel like you're in the system a little more, whereas Dragon Rampant's great to just like throw down and see some, do some battle.
Yeah, and I like the format of like all those Osprey books. Like the blue.
Yeah,
I've never played an Osprey war game, but I always look at them like they're really attractive, like as a set, as a thing to dive into. But and you mentioned Oathmark too. Like I've played a little bit of like Frostgrave in the Archipelago expansion and stuff, but like I haven't played Oathmark, but I love the way the miniatures look, and I love the presentation of the Oathmark everything.
Well, I recommend both of those games. Very, very. I played a lot of Dragon Rampant. I played not as much Oathmark, but I have played a fair amount. They're both really well done games. So yeah, definitely check that out if anybody's interested in.
Yeah.
Obviously, and Dragon Rampant's great. One of the best parts of it is it's designed for you to make up whatever army you want. You're not trying to pigeonhole your unit types into what was made up. So if you're going to sculpt your own figures, or you've got some figures you like and you need to you want to put them in a game, you can make a unit that'll work for that.
that's appealing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know where 15 millimeter holds a place in what I'm doing right now, but are you? So hey, let's segue into this. So not only are you all these other things and making this really cool game, Savage, you're also working on a tabletop game called Lordbreaker.
Yeah.
So
trying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
in the little bits and pieces, every time I have a little half hour here or there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and kind of where
Sure,
it's at and what your plans are for it?
There's my, janky, it's falling apart, but
yes,
my little test, Bible. But yeah, it takes place in the, it is the Savage setting.
Good. I figured I was going to ask, but
yeah, but like oh man, there's like so many different ways to approach this, but like the last few years, really, like I love settings like Warhammer. I love 40K and all of it, fantasy. But I've gotten burnt out on like paying for it all. Yes. And like kind of the FOMO stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh man, like I want this and I want this, and like this thing is only a timed release, and like
yeah.
So I've been trying to like yank those hooks out, and it's been very liberating. And it's given me like my focus is sort of turned away from it, and like I'm looking at all these older systems, and finding a ton of wiggle room in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been exploring chainmail, for example, a lot.
Basically the first war game, or at least fantasy, I should say, because obviously there was war games before that, but
right, yeah, it's the first time they not just like a fantasy supplement into it, so you could play like orcs and elves and dwarves and
mm-hmm.
Big giant creatures and stuff, but it has a and I don't know how like new this is in the along the timeline of wargaming, but like it has the man-to-man rules
mm-hmm.
as well, like where it's you can do a skirmish, like you can do like basically like hero versus hero, like, and it's you got like 5 guys and it's the other guy has 5 to whatever guys, and you're not doing massed rank and file combat. You're doing like little dudes like dueling each other and stuff, parrying, and but that's been a lot of fun because it is like it's so wide open. It can be anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do John Carter of Mars with that or something, or whatever the heck. And I've just been kind of like getting back into tabletop stuff in general, which like I've had like like gaps here and there with it, where like I started with it like really young, collecting armies, painting armies, and getting into like stuff like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and then you get into my teens and I stop,
mm-hmm.
Come back to it a little bit here and there and stop, and then just lately, like the past like 5 years, it's been a lot of like getting back into the whole thing. And there's this thing going on over the past several years or whatever with the OSR. Are you familiar with that at all?
I don't think so. What is that?
It's short for Old School Revival, Renaissance.
Okay. That's clearly been happening like majorly the last 5 years, like you said. I just didn't realize there was a term for it.
Yeah, and it's that specifically is in the context of stuff like Dungeons and Dragons, where it's like people aren't like too happy with like the way that like something like Dungeons and Dragons 5e looks or something. It's like, it doesn't feel like old school. It's not deadly enough, or it's not. It doesn't have the bite to it, or whatever. It's like it's a little more corporatized, right, or something. So people have just been kind of like exploring the old ways a little bit, and I was very excited about that, and I still am. But like in my mind, it was like, OSR must mean like there are these guys getting into like the real like kind of crunchy rule systems like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons or something. But it's more like, they're like anything goes. I don't know,
They want it to be looser and just be able to, play in here.
Yeah, and I think like I was a little bit disappointed there because it was like I kind of want like a repeatable rule system, like as a wargamer. Like I'm like I want something that like anyone can do, and be consistent with, and and whatever. And I'm not saying like people should like there's like a wrong way to you're having fun wrong or whatever. But like having a kind of crunchier rule system kind of appeals to me, to allow you to like do wacky stuff like run kingdoms and as well as like solo adventurers, and like there's a survival set of rules or something where you're out and like scrounging for game, or like getting attacked by like a tribe of orcs or something, and there's like rules for that. Like you can point to them, and you can like have someone else repeat them just like you're doing it. But so I think my like Lordbreaker is a little bit of like a meditation and an exploration on what I want, like what I'm looking for. Like it's sword and sorcery themed and everything, but like you can do like my goal is to have you be able to do whatever you want with it. Start with a blank canvas and just start exploring a section of the world, and then include rules to like populate a world if you wanted to.
Wow.
Like as you go, and like it's like it'd be like in a video game or something where you're starting with like all these survival crafting games, right? Like you go into a server, the server's wiped clean. It's go out and make something, like go tame the wilds kind of a thing, which to my understanding, that's how a lot of like the old school like Greyhawk and Blackmore campaigns that these guys were running in the 70s functioned as. It was like they let their players like pick hexes on the map, and if they had the resources and the money and the time, like they'd build a keep out there, and they'd start their own version of civilization, and then players would be doing that, and then they'd butt heads, and then it would turn into a war game. Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I want this. It's like the stuff that I always thought like tabletop role playing / war games could be. And then it's like now you're thinking of like logistics, like how do I get this mass of troops like across the river so that can go assault this town or whatever, and like do they have the resources, like are they going to get ambushed along the way, who knows, like so that's kind of
I love
what Lordbreaker
I love the sound of that. That reminds me of when the very first time that I got in 40K. That was so we started with Hero Quest, but we ended up getting 40K, and we immediately we didn't know how to play or anything, basically, and
nobody did.
we even toyed with the idea like, well, can we blend 40K and Warhammer, and I got into it 40K second edition. So I barely missed Rogue Trader, and then I found out, oh, well, they kind of wrote it to be mingled. I didn't even know that at the time. But anyways, we wanted to do this big, massive world campaign where everybody would be trying to take over this planet, and we'd have our different spots and hexes, and you would have to have all the logistics. Like you'd have to actually shuttle supplies of food and ammo to survive. And we came up with these secret plans where we would have supply convoys, but it would be a trap. We'd actually load them up with Space Marines, and if they'd come in to just take out the supply train, get wiped out because it'd really be an ambush. So, but that's
exactly what I'm talking about.
That sounds
and
awesome.
if maybe there's an orbital battle going on too, and like whoever wins up there gets to like send dropships down or whatever, and like now on the next battle, like you're gonna have this extra thing that the other guy didn't anticipate, and that's the way I always like. I think what bothers me a little bit about especially like modern 40K and games like it, like they're always approached, or they're always marketed as these like balanced PvP systems, and it's like I've always kind of thought of them as adventure games. It's like, what's gonna happen? I don't know. And so it's always like you're massing a bunch of stuff up on either side of the table, and then just kind of marching it forward and like killing each other. It's like where's like the a group of like men like in a column going through the jungle, and then they're surprised on either side by something, and it's like, oh no, it's not this like very sterile like, and that is a like, I'm not saying that's not a legitimate way to play either, like it all is, and that's the majority of my play time with these games is buy point buy, make it even, like and march at each other and slaughter each other in the middle or whatever. but
you bring up a good point, and again, this is all like you said, it's just something that's a desire of yours, like something that you're feeling a craving for. But we are definitely in a time there obviously are games that are more like that out there still, but we're definitely in a time that's heavily weighted to that sort of side, and more tournament play and that sort of thing, and less of the just adventure, like you said.
Yeah, like something that like a gaming club would get together and do because they know each other really well, and you know, and obviously like the local culture needs to kind of like be into that, you know, your group or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Like I just I kind of see a hole in, and it, like the stuff I'm saying is not new either. Like guys like Tony Bath with his like Hyborian campaign is like one of the things that a lot of these guys point to. Like that guy was doing it, you know, he was running these very complicated campaigns, and like the dice and the situations were wound up telling a story. Like you don't need to start from like this, here's Forgotten Realms, or here's, you know, the Empire or whatever, and like these things happen in this book, so we have to kind of like do this or whatever. It's like, no, it's like kind of you start with some adventurers or whatever, and it like turns eventually, like because of each character's wants and desires, you eventually wind up at like a war game, or you know, or something. I don't know. It's a lot to unpack, and it's a lot to talk about, but I feel a burning desire to try to like explore some of those systems and like try to write rules that explicitly say like, yes, you can do this, yes, you can do this, here's how you would do it. Because the problem with a lot of these older books and things like AD&D first edition, like so many people argue about like what they were trying to say in that book. You know, like stuff like that. Whereas like, you know, we're talking about like when I got into 40K, it was second edition. And there were like so many things I didn't understand, and like reading it was kind of like the rules were sort of all over the place a little bit, and they were kind of meandery, kind of like how I'm being right now. but it's like it was one thing I do like about modern games is they present the rules very clearly.
Yeah,
like they've gotten it down.
Elegance is come a long way.
But they've also thrown out a lot of rules, which makes me a little sad.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Well, now that's right. This is the time where you know, game industry, you know, they've gotten so much better about explaining and implementing rules. And part of that, like you said, was actually trimming out and creating these more succinct experiences. I think it is time to start bringing in some of that complication, but taking what has been learned about doing it better, you know, and not just a meandering rambling, because they didn't have a lot of frame reference back then, right? They were D&D did a lot of that without a lot of reference.
Yeah, and they kind of just assumed, like, it came from a place where it was like, we're writing down what we're playing. Like they, all their friends and everything are having this like awesome time at the table, and then they try to explain it to somebody that has no idea what it is. And like there's a lot of stuff that's probably taken for granted there that, you know, it's like I'm like, I've been going through all these old rules, like chainmail again, and they just talk about like there's a lot of things they leave out, and it's like it's clear that it's like you kind of had to be there to just be playing to even like like they're just like, so now you roll with your friend's dice or something. It's like they don't say like when or how or if it's, you know, 1d6 or 2d6 or whatever. They just like there's a lot of some, and you kind of have to be a bit of an archaeologist to go through the book and find like another context that they bring it up again and they actually mention what you're supposed to do. So then you retroactively go back to the part you didn't understand. It's like, oh, okay, they're talking about this, but they didn't say this or whatever.
You've got me excited to check it out and read it. I actually, and if anybody's listening to this, you should go to DriveThruRPG, because I think it's on sale for like $3 right now for the PDF. It's a steal. And
yes, all that stuff is on there, and you can just print it out and you can pour over it. And it's like just because it's old doesn't mean it was like wrong or worse. Like in a lot of ways, I think there's a lot of like nutrient rich material there that like we've sort of mistaken for bloat in a way. And it's and I just kind of want to like just like, you know, do an experiment where it's like give myself a test, like can I with my own little like, you know, Lordbreaker thing, like can I sort of articulate and organize it better or something. You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see what you do with it, and it's very cool to hear the more full blown concept, because I didn't know what fully to expect from what I originally saw on one of your streams, but I love this idea that it can be kind of this smaller, more intimate thing or grander thing, and to have it all in the Savage World is seeing your art laid all over it, especially with the inspirations, is very exciting to me.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate that, and yeah, I mean, a lot of days, like, I don't really know exactly what it's going to be either. Like, I'm, kind of like
still incubating. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to codify it as I go, I guess. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to dig too much into it. Well, I do. I'm lying. I want to dig into it more, but I don't want to put you too much on the spot, and I know it's still forming. But I'll ask one more question, and with the understanding this could be completely different as things progress. But do you have a visual in your mind of kind of what a starting place in Lordbreaker would be, at least at this point? Like, do you start like, you're a barbarian, go make your way in the world, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I have fully played through. I wrote up some rules to generate an adventure for me. Like, I played it solo too, and I played it co-op. I've also run it as a traditional, like, a DM for like 3 guys sitting around a table. We did it that way as well. And that adventure that I did run for these guys was the adventure that I played solo as well, that the game, like, the rules I wrote down generated for me. And it wound up being a very classic, like, someone you knew, whether it's a loved one or like a daughter or a wife or a brother, whatever, husband, was killed by a necromancer in a ritual, and, like, now you're sort of like in a foreign land hunting that necromancer down, and, like, you've sort of found the place where you think they may have gotten to, and there's like a little overworld section, and then several little, like, optional dungeons, and then, like, it's sort of random where this guy turns up and what he's doing. So they're like, I've done, like, an adventure like that, and I'm like maybe that's kind of what it comes with. Like, if Lordbreaker were a product, it would come with something like that, and then maybe you'd have to defend, like, a local village from like an undead, like, revenge thing or something, where it's like, now it's a skirmish game and, like, figure it out. Like, they're coming to kill the town and burn everything and, like, slaughter everyone and use them in ritualistic sacrifices or something. Get a militia together, and lead them. After you kill, like, the necromancer that, like, took your whoever, and that happened because, like, one of the first characters I generated died in character generation.
Nice. Oh, I love that. It's such a funny, quirky thing. I never played Traveler, but I've always heard about those.
Yeah.
The closest thing.
Traveler's so weird, man. Like, I want to understand that game, and that's another one I'd like to.
It sounds so.
Yeah, sorry, you were saying.
No. It's fine. No, please continue. That's fun. I think the idea of that is fun, and I don't know. I don't want to say I was a competitive gamer, because I didn't really want to be, but I did want to win. Like, that's what I focused on.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older,
I think we all do a little,
But I finally realized, oh my gosh, it is so much more fun for me to just play and not be so hung up on having to be the best or be awesome, and, like, accept that you're gonna lose. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I really don't care if I lose. I just want there's some crazy weird story thing to happen. Yeah. And even that with character generation, where something can, the whole roguelike scene in video games, like games like FTL and even Savage in a way, just because of how much procedural generation stuff happens. It's cool to see all those little stories emerge.
Yeah, and like I'm trying to lean a little bit away from the DM or the referee or the games master as, a failed novelist sort of thing. And it's like, let's make a game where it's like, it's explicit that you are like a rules arbiter, like, the rules, so you, like, everyone has a fair shake, and you can explain it to people if they have questions or whatever, and you can make calls on it. And and you're also a like conflict designer. And like let's see what happens, and like rules that allow the referee to also be surprised, you know, like, and excited, and they get to play the game too. It's not like they're just this genius person that like has to come up with this crazy like Machiavellian story for people to go through. It's all like they get to play too, like, you know, and if like Lordbreaker, like through the dice and through circumstance, like it arrives at like these wargaming situations, maybe you get to go play a war game. Like maybe none of the other like characters or players that are playing characters are involved in that. Like maybe you'd like go and ask someone else, I want this to resolve itself in the game world. Like let's play a war game. You know, like here's the situation. Like how do we resolve this? You know, and we'll kill each other, I guess, and you know, we'll figure out what happens. And like now, like a new kingdom is born, or like an empire falls, or whatever. I think I got way off track. Sorry, but
that's all right.
Yeah, talking about plastic toy soldiers in fantasy. You know, will do that to me. But
I had such a great time talking with Matt that this interview went so long that I'm gonna have to break it up into 2 parts. So stay tuned until part 2.